Scott Adkins is a British actor who was previously a martial artist before he became famous. Even after he found fame, Adkins continued to train during his free time, and there's plenty of footage showing off his skills. As a result of his martial arts talents, he has often been cast as a martial arts specialist in various movies and has made a Hollywood career out of it. Perhaps his best role was the Russian prison fighter Yuri Boyka, who he played in the Undisputed 2 movie. Since then, there has been a lot of speculation about his fighting skills online, which we will address. From a young age, Adkins trained karate and taught it for a while in his home city. He is a recognized black belt in karate, and this isn't too surprising. In short, you could argue that Adkins' biggest talent is his kicking, and he seems to have a real love of using his kicks in movies. Remember, Adkins was born in 1976 and would have grown up in an era when karate and similar disciplines were massively popular. As a result, this likely influenced his venture into learning karate. Whilst karate is not as popular these days, make no mistake about it, Adkins is a very legitimate black belt. He has trained for several decades, so he clearly knows what he is doing. Before karate, Scott Adkins first trained Taekwondo. Obviously, the two arts have a lot of similarities, with Taekwondo being best known for its athletic and powerful kicks. In the movie Accident Man, Adkins shows off some of these kicks, in particular which show athletic jumps, spins, and supreme knockout power. Of course, there's also an element of Hollywood choreography, but the point remains, Adkins certainly knows how to throw Taekwondo kicks. This clip, for example, shows Adkins doing an incredibly powerful Taekwondo kick. However, it's not just karate and Taekwondo that Adkins uses. In his younger days, he also trained kickboxing, which also makes sense. As you can imagine, blending these similar three disciplines together means that Adkins is an incredibly versatile and skilled striker. In terms of technique and different styles to call on, it's fair to say he knows a lot when it comes to throwing kicks. Whilst learning striking alone is great, this is obviously not a comprehensive system when it comes to fighting. Arguably, every good fighter should be able to mix up striking with grappling. Thankfully for Scott Adkins, he can also grapple. Going back to his earlier days, Adkins trained a mixture of judo and Japanese jiu-jitsu. Both of these arts are based on standing and throwing opponents. For instance, judo has some pretty big hip throws and trips, whilst Japanese jiu-jitsu has a bigger emphasis on standing joint locks and submissions. Ultimately, both of these disciplines eventually led to the popularity of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which expanded these arts onto the ground. As Adkins has used Brazilian jiu-jitsu in some films, it's fair to say his ground game isn't too shabby either. Again, this makes sense considering he's trained judo, which also involves submissions on the ground, such as armbars and chokes with the gi. In other words, even if Adkins didn't manage to put you down with his dangerous kicks, then there's a very good chance he could throw you to the ground. You may be interested to know that over the years, Scott Adkins has done a number of other martial arts movies, so it makes sense he's learned the likes of ninjutsu and Krav Maga. Krav Maga in particular is largely used in movies as it has elements of hand-to-hand combat and deadly moves such as neck breaks and other brutal attacks. According to Men's Health magazine, Adkins is trained in both of these disciplines. It's quite interesting that Adkins has trained ninjutsu, seeing as it's largely a defunct martial art these days. For the most part, ninjutsu is used to describe fighting tactics used by ninjas in feudal Japan. Although there are still some techniques that can be used in modern society, it's mostly about espionage. Whether Adkins learned this for fun or for certain movie roles is unclear, but if he was open-minded during his training, then he likely picked up a few new moves. As mentioned previously, in Undisputed 2, Scott Adkins played Yuri Boyka, who was a notorious Russian prison fighter. Here, he fought in bouts that roughly followed MMA rules. Because of this, many people put 2 and 2 together and thought that Adkins is a well-known MMA fighter. However, this is incorrect. Whilst it's fair to say that Adkins is definitely a well-rounded martial artist, calling him an MMA fighter is somewhat unfair. MMA fighters are generally well cross-trained and have learned martial arts that reflect the rules of the sport. For instance, you won't really find Japanese Jiu-Jitsu or Krav Maga in MMA. Having said this, there's definitely karate, kickboxing and taekwondo used in MMA, as well as judo. With this in mind, Adkins is certainly a skilled fighter and would easily be able to do well in amateur MMA. However, due to his age and skill set, he probably wouldn't fare too well in high-level professional MMA. This isn't anything to take away from Adkins though, as he would still easily be able to blitz 99% of the population. Overall, it would be best to describe the fighting style of Scott Adkins as a fighter that specializes in kicks. Kicking has proved a valuable asset over the years, and a head kick can easily knock out an opponent. Combining karate, kickboxing and taekwondo has meant that Adkins is extremely well versed in this area and is definitely an expert. He is also very solid when it comes to grappling and has dabbled in other martial arts too. As a result, it's a safe bet to say that Scott Adkins is not a man to be messed with. To top this off, he's also very strong and conditioned, which goes in line with his old school, traditional martial arts background. The verdict is that Scott Adkins is a legit martial artist who certainly knows what he is doing and is a very solid fighter.